Medicare doesn't cover loneliness, and a fat 401k doesn't guarantee peace. Retirement can still erase you quietly until you start believing you're lazy, when you're really just unstructured. So let me ask you straight, when you retired, did you feel free or did you feel erased? Part 1. The empty chair and the feeling of being erased. When you retired, did you feel free or did you feel erased? I'm not asking to be dramatic. I'm asking because a lot of people don't admit the truth out loud, even to themselves. They tell everyone, I'm doing fine, while their days quietly collapse into something that doesn't feel like living. I thought retirement would feel like a reward. Instead, it felt like the world stopped needing me. Not all at once, either. It was slow, it was polite. It was the kind of disappearing that happens when nobody is mad at you. Nobody is firing you. Nobody is calling you a failure. But somehow you still end up feeling like one. I used to think the problem was me. I used to think, maybe I'm just lazy now. Maybe I got soft. I'd look at my own calendar and it was blank, and I'd feel ashamed of it. Then I'd look at other people, my old coworkers, my kids, the neighbors, and I'd tell myself they were busy, and I was just drifting. That lie is dangerous, because it turns normal transition into a quiet self-hatred. Here's what I finally learned, and I'm going to say it plain. You're not lazy. You're unstructured, and unstructured turns into depressed if you let it. That's not an insult. That's a warning. Because after 40 years of schedules, deadlines, meetings, and being needed, your brain does not magically know how to live without a frame. Let me tell you about a man I met, Robert, late 60s, former high school principal in Ohio. For decades, his day started before sunrise and ended when the last problem was handled. Parents calling, teachers needing support, kids in trouble, budgets, board meetings. He was somebody in his town. People waved at him at the grocery store. People asked his opinion like it mattered. Then he retired. And nobody hated him. Nobody did him wrong. The school didn't burn down without him. It just kept going. Within a few months, he went from hearing his name 100 times a day to hearing it maybe once a week. The phone got quiet. The calendar went empty. He didn't know what to do with a Tuesday. And here's the part that messes with your head. The Social Security check still shows up. The 401k statement still shows up. Medicare mail still shows up. The property tax bill still shows up like clockwork. Life keeps sending paperwork, but it stops sending proof that you matter. That's the part nobody warns you about. Robert told me he'd sit there and think, I worked my whole life. I did the right thing, so why do I feel broke, not broke in dollars? Broke inside, because the currency he lost wasn't money. It was being needed. This is the chain, and if you've lived it, you'll recognize it. No schedule leads to no momentum. No momentum leads to too much thinking. Too much thinking turns into shame. Shame turns into withdrawal. Withdrawal turns into deeper loneliness. And loneliness, real loneliness, doesn't arrive with a siren. It arrives with a quiet week where the only conversation you had was with a cashier. A lot of folks think, I'll fix it when I feel like it. But feelings don't lead in retirement. Structure leads. If you wait until you feel motivated, you can wait a long time. And while you wait, your world gets smaller. You drive fewer miles because gas is expensive and night driving feels risky. You skip the diner on Main Street because you don't want to sit alone. You tell yourself you'll go next week. Then next week becomes next month. I'm not blaming you. I'm telling you what happens if you don't interrupt it. Here's my mistake. This is the part where I own it. I used to think retirement would automatically feel good because I earned it. That was the lie. Then I lost the structure that held me together, and I didn't even recognize what was happening. That was the pain. Now I know retirement isn't a reward you unwrap. It's a life you rebuild, and it starts with the boring stuff you're weak. Your routine, your anchors. Let's make this practical. Because find your passion is the kind of advice that sounds nice and helps. Nobody, Most people don't need a passion at 68. They need a plan for Monday morning. They need 2 reasons to put on real pants. They need one place where somebody notices if they don't show up. So here's what I want you to do. I call it the 7-day map, and it's not fancy. You take a piece of paper, not an app, not a spreadsheet. Just paper, and you write the next 7 days down the left side. Then you choose 2 daily anchors. 2, not 10. 2. Anchor 1 is physical, because your body and your mind are tied together whether you like it or not. Pick something you can do even with bad knees. At 9 a.m., walk to the mailbox and back. If that's too much, walk to the end of the driveway and back. If you live in an apartment, walk to the lobby and back. This isn't fitness. This is proof of life. Anchor 2 is connection, because isolation is where this whole thing turns dark. At 3 p.m., you call or text one person, not a group chat, not a big dramatic catch-up, 10 minutes. You can even leave a voicemail. Hey, it's me. No emergency, just checking in. Got 10 minutes sometime this week. That's it. Simple. Direct. No begging. No explaining. Then you add 1 weekly show-up point. Tuesday, the local library. Not because you love books, but because it's a place where humans exist and you can belong without spending money. Or Thursday morning, coffee at the diner on Main Street. Order something small. Tip a couple bucks if you can. Let the staff learn your name again. That's not silly. That's rebuilding your presence in the world. You might be thinking, that sounds too small. Good. Small is what you can actually do. Small is what you'll repeat. And repetition is what pulls you out of that erased feeling. Identity doesn't come back because you think about it harder. It comes back because you show up somewhere, consistently, until you remember you're still a person in the world. This is not about being busy. Busy is cheap. You can be busy and still feel empty. This is about building a week that has weight to it. 2 anchors a day and 1 place a week. If you do that for 7 days, you won't become a new man overnight. But you'll stop bleeding time. You'll stop drifting. You'll give your mind a rail to hold on to. And one more thing, because I know what comes next. The moment you start resting, the guilt shows up. It whispers that you're wasting time, that you're selfish, that you should be doing more. That guilt has been riding your back for decades, and it doesn't retire just because you did. That's what we're going to talk about next. Part 2. The guilt of a lifetime of carrying everyone. Why do you feel guilty on the first morning you finally get to breathe? I'm not talking about a little weird. I'm talking about that tight, angry feeling like you're doing something wrong just because you're sitting down. That guilt is one of the biggest lies retirement sells you, and it ruins more golden years than bad knees ever will. Let me put a face on it. Linda is a retired ER nurse in Florida, mid-60s, the kind of woman who ran on adrenaline for decades. She raised kids, covered shifts, did overtime, and never complained because that's what her generation did. Now she's got a quiet morning, a Social Security check that comes on time, and a fridge that's paid for. And still, the guilt shows up like an old supervisor standing in the doorway. It sounds like this. You should be doing something. Somebody needs you. It doesn't even matter what something is. That voice doesn't want a plan. It wants you back in the old role, useful, exhausted, and praised for suffering. Linda told me she'll clean the same counter twice, fold laundry that isn't dirty, or volunteer for things she doesn't even enjoy, just to shut that voice up. That's not discipline. That's addiction. A lot of us got addicted to being needed. We learned early that worth came from usefulness. You were the provider, the fixer, the dependable one. You handled the bills, the emergencies, the family drama, the broken water heater, the sick parent, the kid who needed tuition. And after 40 years of carrying everyone, your nervous system doesn't know what to do when nobody is pulling on you. Boomers and older Gen X were raised on a simple religion: work hard. Don't complain. Keep your head down. Overtime wasn't a choice. It was a badge. Even if you had a union job and a decent pension, you still acted like you were one missed paycheck away from trouble, because that's how life trained you. So when your body finally forces you to slow down joint pain, blood pressure, fatigue, rest feels like failure. Here's the cost, and I'm going to be blunt. That guilt will push you right back into overfunctioning, even when you can't afford it physically. It makes you say yes when you should say no. It makes you take on responsibilities that should have been handed back years ago. It makes you ignore your own doctor appointments because other people need me more. Then you turn around and wonder why your health slides. And it doesn't just cost you health. It costs you relationships. Because when you're always on duty, you're not present. You're resentful. You're tired. You start keeping score: who called, who didn't, who helped, who didn't. Then loneliness creeps in, not because you're alone, but because you're surrounded by people and still feel unseen. There's also a practical American pinch point that makes this worse. Retirement is not a vacation. It's a new job called managing life. Medicare paperwork shows up. There are co-pays, prescriptions, and appointments that feel like a part-time schedule. Property taxes don't care that you stopped working. Gas still costs what it costs, and you start doing math in your head before you drive 10 miles. You might be living on a fixed income, pulling from a 401k, watching the market swing like it has a personal grudge. And in the middle of all that, your guilt still says you haven't earned rest. That's why I want you to hear this clearly. That guilt isn't morality. It's programming. It was installed in you over decades. Some of it came from parents, some of it came from bosses, some of it came from the culture that praised you most when you were running yourself into the ground, but it is not the truth about your worth. Here's my own mistake, and I'll say it straight. I used to think, if I'm not useful, I'm nothing. That was the lie. Then I hit a stretch where my body and my mind weren't cooperating: burnout. A health scare. The kind that makes you look at your life differently. And I realized I was treating rest like a sin. That was the pain. Now I know rest is maintenance, not laziness. It's the oil change. It's the brake check. And if you refuse maintenance, you don't prove strength, you just break down in a more expensive way. So what's the new standard? Your job now is to protect your health and your relationships, because nobody else is going to do it for you. Your kids aren't going to schedule your walks. Your old boss isn't going to remind you to take your meds. The world will gladly take everything you offer until you have nothing left. Then it will move on. That's not bitterness. That's reality. I'm not telling you to stop caring. I'm telling you to stop proving. Contribution can be smaller and still honorable. You don't need to be the engine anymore. You can be the anchor. Here's a tool that sounds simple because it is simple. And it works if you do it. I call it the permission slip. You write one sentence on a piece of paper, sign it, and put it where you'll see it every day by the coffee maker, on the fridge, next to your pill organizer. The sentence is, I have permission to rest without earning it today. Then you sign your name like you mean it. Because if you don't give yourself permission, you'll spend the next 10 years waiting for someone else to grant it. And they won't. Now the second tool is a boundary, and it matters just as much. You need one no explanation needed script. One sentence you can say to family, church groups, neighbors, anybody who assumes your time is free because you're retired. Here's a line you can use. I can't take that on right now. But I hope you find someone who can. That's it. No apology tour. No story about your knee. No long speech. Just a clean no that protects your energy. If that feels harsh, ask yourself who pays the bill when you say yes. It's not the person asking. It's you. It's your blood pressure, your sleep, your patience. It's the $35 copay you have to cover when stress pushes you back into the doctor's office. It's the afternoon you lose because you were too worn out to call the one. Friend who actually cares, and I know the real-life complications. Some of you are still helping raise grandkids. Some of you can't drive at night anymore. Some of you are managing arthritis or hearing loss, or anxiety that nobody sees. That's exactly why this matters. Your energy is not unlimited. You have to spend it like a fixed income. Here's the shift I want you to make today. Stop asking, am I doing enough? Start asking, is what I'm doing keeping me healthy and connected? If the answer is no, you're not being noble, you're being drained. When guilt stops running your day, you finally see what you're spending your time on, and that's when the real math starts. Part 3, time is the only real currency. If time was cash, would you be spending it the way you do right now? I'm not trying to guilt you. I'm trying to wake you up. Because a lot of people my age will argue about money for hours, then hand their days away like they're free samples. I tracked every dollar, but I didn't track my days. That was my mistake. I knew what came out of my checking account. I knew what my 401k looked like on paper. And I knew when my Social Security check hit. What I didn't know was where my weeks were going. Because weeks don't show up on a statement. They just disappear. Let me give you a contrast that's hard to forget. A guy I knew, James, early 70s, did everything right. Paid off house, decent nest egg, no wild spending. He could tell you exactly what his property taxes were down to the penny. He'd say, I'm fine, and financially he probably was. Then his body changed the rules. Suddenly his calendar wasn't trips and hobbies. It was appointments. Specialists, waiting rooms, prescription refills, Medicare paperwork. Copays that didn't seem like much at first, $35 here, $45 there, until it added up, and the whole month felt like it revolved around. Medical logistics, he wasn't broke, but he was trapped. And here's what he told me. Quiet and serious, I can't buy my way back to a normal afternoon. That line should hit you right in the chest, because it's true. Money can help. Money matters. I'm not one of those people who says it doesn't. But money can't buy back Tuesday. Money can't buy back the year you spent worrying. Money can't buy back your energy when it's gone. Now let me give you the other side. Carol, late 60s, lives on a fixed income. Nothing glamorous. She watches her spending, drives fewer miles to save gas. And she doesn't do anything that would blow up her budget. She's not pretending she's rich, but she has a rhythm. Every week, she shows up somewhere: library program, church group, a coffee meetup at the diner on Main Street. She laughs with real people. She's got one friend who actually answers the phone. And that, right there, is wealth. You can hear the difference. One person has dollars but no days. The other has fewer dollars but still has life in the week. I'm not shaming anyone for saving. I'm telling you the truth. If your plan only protects your money and not your time, you're still exposed. Here's what happens to most of us after 55. The day gets swallowed by necessary things: errands, doctor visits, picking up prescriptions, fixing something around the house because you're trying to avoid paying someone, scrolling news that leaves you angry and tired, but you keep doing it anyway, worrying about politics, the market, the cost of groceries, the next property tax hike. Then you look up and it's 5 and you can't remember what you did besides survive. And you tell yourself you'll start living when the knee feels better, when the weather warms up, when you get through this next appointment, when you lose 10 pounds, when you have more energy, when you feel like calling your friend, when you have something interesting to say. That's the senior trap. Someday becomes a full-time job, and it pays you in regret. Here's the hard truth, and I'm going to say it without softening it. At this age, you don't get unlimited tries. You don't get unlimited summers. You don't get unlimited mornings where you wake up and everything still works. That's not fear-mongering. That's math. You already understand budgeting. You understand that you don't blow your Social Security check in 2 days and then act shocked you're short at the end of the month. So why do you blow your week on nothing that feeds you? Why do you hand your time to habits that leave you empty or doom scrolling, pointless errands, conversations that drain you, worry that doesn't solve anything? I'm not asking you to become a productivity robot. I'm asking you to stop acting like time is leftover change. Time is a fixed income now. It comes in every morning, and at night it's gone whether you spent it well or not. Let me run my own loop here, because I earned this lesson the hard way. I used to think, if I save enough, I'll be fine. That was the lie. Then I watched a friend decline fast, and I watched my own year get eaten by stress and waiting for the right time to do things that mattered. That was the pain. Now I know the truth. Protect your days the way you protect your dollars. Because dollars can sit in an account, days cannot. So here's your tool. And it's simple enough that you'll be tempted to dismiss it. Don't. It's called a 3-day time audit. You don't need a phone app. You don't need a smartwatch. You need a pen. For the next 3 days, at the end of the day, write 3 lines. First line, what drained me today? Be honest. Was it the news? Was it an extra errand that could have waited? Was it a phone call where you carried someone else's anxiety for an hour? Second line, what lifted me today? Maybe it was a 10-minute call with someone who actually cares. Maybe it was a short walk. Maybe it was sitting at the library and hearing other humans talk. Third line, what will I cut by 10 minutes tomorrow? 10 minutes is enough. 10 minutes is realistic. Then you do the trade. 1 daily no to fund, 1 daily yes. If you cut 10 minutes of the news loop, you buy 10 minutes of life. If you cut 10 minutes of arguing online, you buy 10 minutes of stretching. If you cut 1 draining phone call short, you buy 1 call that matters. This is not self-help. This is rebalancing your budget. Here are a few examples that actually fit a senior life. You say no to checking your 401k balance every day. Once a month is plenty for most people. You say no to driving across town twice in 1 day. Combine trips. Save miles. Save gas. Save your nerves. You say no to 1 extra favor that costs you an afternoon. Because you already have your own appointments and your own limits. And you say yes to 1 small thing that puts you back into the world walk, to the mailbox, coffee at the diner, a daytime library class, a senior center lunch special that costs $15 and buys you conversation. You're not doing this to be busy. You're doing this to stop waking up 3 years from now wondering where the time went, because it will go. It always does. The only question is whether you spent it on worry and isolation, or whether you spent it on something that makes you feel like a human being. Again, and here's what happens once you start protecting your time. You run into the bigger question you've been avoiding. If you're not filling the day with noise and errands, you're going to face the silence, and in that silence, you'll hear it, the identity problem. Who are you without your old role? When you finally stop wasting time, you realize the real problem wasn't the calendar. It was the identity tied to your old role. Part 4. When your role dies, you're still here. Who are you when nobody needs your job title anymore? That question sounds simple until you're living it. Because when the title disappears, a lot of people don't just lose work. They lose the thing that told them who they were every single day. You miss the feeling of being needed. I'm saying it out loud because most folks won't. They'll joke about finally taking it easy, but inside, they're scared. They're scared that without the job, without the uniform, without the toolbox, without the responsibility, they're just taking up space. Let me tell you about Frank. Frank was a firefighter for decades. The kind of man who didn't talk much about feelings because he didn't have time for that. His life had a rhythm shift: work, calls, training, the guys, the station, the sense that when something went wrong, he was part of the solution. He wasn't famous, but he mattered, and he knew it. Frank retired and tried to do the right thing. He told himself he'd relax. He told his wife he'd finally slow down. Then one day he's at the grocery store and a guy slips in the parking lot. Nothing dramatic, just a fall, a scraped knee, some confusion. Frank's body moves before his brain does. He's kneeling down, checking if the guy hit his head, calling for help. Talking steady, making sure somebody doesn't panic. And for about 5 minutes, Frank is himself again. Then he goes home. No radio, no call, no team, no one saying, "Good job." No one needing him the next morning. And that little 5-minute taste of being useful turns into a punch. Because he remembers what he used to be, and he feels what he is now. And it doesn't match. That's the identity collapse nobody puts on a retirement brochure. Here's the inner fight, and it's ugly. Pride tells you, I should still be the guy. Reality says, your back hurts, your knees aren't what they were, and you don't bounce back anymore. Then pride takes that reality and turns it into shame. You start thinking, I'm less than, so you withdraw. You sit more. You do less, and the less you do, the smaller you feel. That's how a good man ends up stuck in a chair, watching the world move on like he's already gone. In America, we tie worth to work hard. Overtime culture wasn't just about money, it was about identity. Maybe Frank had a pension, maybe he had a 401k, maybe the Social Security check shows up like it's supposed to. But none of that replaces purpose. Money covers bills? It doesn't answer the question. Why should I get up today when identity disappears? People do one of a few things. Some chase busy work projects that don't matter. Errands that never end because being busy feels safer than being empty. Some drink more than they used to and call it unwinding. Some pick fights at home because they don't know what to do with themselves. And some just go quiet. Quiet is the scariest one, because it looks peaceful from the outside and it's death by slow motion on the inside. Here's the reframe, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Your old role died. You didn't. The badge can retire. The paycheck can stop. The title can vanish. But you're still here, and that means you still have something to give. Not in the same way, not at the same pace, but still. This is where a lot of people get it wrong. They think the answer is a new career or some big new identity. No. What you need is a right-sized role. A role that fits your current body, your current energy, your current life. Something that makes you feel useful without breaking you. A right-sized role has 3 rules. First, it has to be nearby. If it requires a long drive, it's not sustainable. Especially if you're avoiding night driving or gas is pushing $4 a gallon and you're watching every dollar. Second, it has to be consistent. Once a week beats once a year. Third, it has to be low pressure. You're not proving anything. You're showing up. Now I'll own my part, because I've done the same thing. I used to think, my title is my worth. That was the lie. Then the title went away, and I didn't like the man who was left irritable, restless, and embarrassed that I didn't know how to live without being the guy who handled everything. That was the pain. Now I know the truth worth comes from where you show up, not what's printed on a badge. So let's get practical. Here's the role inventory, and it takes 15 minutes, not a weekend. Not a seminar, 15 minutes. Step 1. Write down 5 things you were good at in your working life. Not the job title, the skills. Maybe you were calm in a crisis. Maybe you were good with numbers. Maybe you fixed things. Maybe you listened well. Maybe you taught younger folks. Keep it honest and simple. Step 2. Circle 1 skill you can still use without punishing your body. If your knees are bad, don't choose heavy lifting. If your energy crashes in the afternoon, don't choose 6-hour shifts. Pick something that fits. Step 3. Choose 1 hour a week where you'll use that skill somewhere. Outside your house. 1 hour? That's the commitment. because 1 hour a week is enough to rebuild identity without draining you. Here's a quick example. Let's say your 5 skills are: I can explain things clearly, I'm good with paperwork, I'm steady when people are upset, I show up on time, and I can read a room. That person could tutor at the local library 1 hour a week, help a food pantry with simple organizing, or be the person who calls and checks in on another senior through a church, group, or community program. None of that requires a back brace. It requires presence. If you're a veteran, maybe it's showing up at the American Legion Hall once a week. Not to brag about the past, but to be around people who speak your language. If you like teaching, maybe it's mentoring at a community college, even if it's just helping someone with resumes. If you're handy, maybe it's doing small, safe tasks for a neighbor changing a smoke detector battery, tightening a loose handle, nothing that risks a fall. And if driving is a limit, pick what's close, in daylight, and on a predictable route. And listen, I know the obstacles. Some of you are caregiving for a spouse. Some of you are watching grandkids. Some of you are dealing with Medicare limitations and frequent appointments. That's exactly why this has to be right-sized. You're not trying to rebuild a 40-hour life. You're trying to rebuild a reason to stand up straight. Here's what you'll notice when you do this. It won't just give you purpose. It will give you people. Somebody will recognize you. Somebody will say your name. Somebody will notice if you don't show up. And if you're honest, that's what you've been missing. A role gives you more than purpose. It gives you people. And if you're honest, loneliness is what's really been eating you. Part 5. Loneliness isn't loud. How many days go by where the only voice you hear is the TV? I'm not asking because I'm nosy. I'm asking because this is how loneliness works in retirement. It doesn't crash through the door. It slides in quietly, and if you don't call it what it is, it will take years from you. I didn't realize I was lonely because nothing bad was happening. That's how it gets you. There's no emergency, no tragedy, no headline. You're paying your bills. Your Social Security check comes in. You're keeping up with your Medicare appointments. And you tell yourself you're fine. Then you notice the week went by and you didn't have one real conversation. Let me put a face to it. Sarah is widowed, late 60s, living in the suburbs. Her days are full of small tasks, pharmacy pickup, a grocery run, maybe a quick stop to pay a bill or handle a form. She'll exchange a few words with the cashier, maybe chat for 30 seconds about the weather. Then she goes home, and that's it. Not dramatic, just quiet. By Friday, she realizes she hasn't said her own thoughts out loud to another person all week. She hasn't laughed with anyone. She hasn't been asked, "How are you really doing?" That's not just loneliness. That's erosion. Here's the senior reality that nobody likes to say. Your kids have jobs and their own families. They are not thinking about you at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday, even if they love you. Your friends drift. Some become snowbirds and disappear to Florida or Arizona for half the year. Some can't drive as far anymore. Some pass away. The phone gets quieter each year, and it's not because you did something wrong. It's because life moves, and it doesn't ask permission. The trap is what you tell yourself in response. Shame says, "I don't want to bother anyone." Pride says, "I'll be fine." Avoidance says, "I'll call later when I have something to say." Those three voices sound responsible. They sound polite. They also keep you isolated. And let's not pretend money doesn't play a part. When you're living on a fixed income, you start doing math before you do anything. You think about gas $4 a gallon in some places, and you decide that 5 miles to the library is not necessary. You think about the $15 lunch special at the senior center and tell yourself, you should save it. You think about the copay and the prescription refill and the property taxes, and you stay home to be smart. Then weeks go by, and your world shrinks down to your living room. I'm going to tell you the hard truth cleanly. Waiting is a decision. It's just a slow one. When you wait for people to call, you're choosing silence. even if you don't mean to. Nobody is coming to rescue your calendar. Not your kids, not your old coworkers, not your neighbors. If you want connection, you have to build it like a routine. Here's the reframe that helped me, and it might help you. You're not asking for a favor. You're offering presence. A 10-minute call is not a burden. Silence is. People can handle 10 minutes. What they can't handle is trying to re-enter your life after 2 years of no contact when everything feels awkward and heavy. I used to think, I don't want to bother anyone. I'll just keep to myself. That was the lie. Then I watched what it did to me, weeks blending together. My mood getting heavier, me getting irritated over small things. My body moving less, my mind getting darker. That was the pain. Now I know the truth. Consistent connection is maintenance. Like taking your meds or paying your bills. You don't wait until you're in crisis to do maintenance. So I'm going to give you 2 tools, not 10. 2. Because the goal isn't to become a social butterfly at 70. The goal is to stop disappearing. Tool 1 is a 10-minute call script. You can text it or leave it as a voicemail. Here it is, and you can copy it word for word. Hey, it's me. No emergency. I was thinking about you. Do you have 10 minutes sometime this week? That's it. No long explanation. No guilt trip. No, I haven't heard from you speech. Just a simple reach. If texting is easier because you have hearing trouble, use text. If talking feels hard because you're anxious, leave a voicemail. If your pride is loud, keep it short. The point is consistency, not perfection. Here's the rule. 1 person, once a week, for 4 weeks, not 10 people. Not one big dramatic reunion. 1 person, once a week. If they don't respond, you try a different person next week. That's not rejection. That's life. People miss calls. People get busy. Do not let one silence become your excuse to go back into hiding. Tool 2 is 1 weekly place. 1 place you show up every week at the same time. So your life has a predictable point of contact. Pick something that fits your body and your budget. The local library is free and full of people, and you don't have to perform. The senior center often has a lunch that's cheaper than eating out. And you'll be around humans. A church group works if you actually like the people, not because you feel obligated. The diner on Main Street works too, because regulars become familiar. And familiar becomes connection. And if driving is a limit, if you don't like night driving, or you don't want to burn miles, go in the morning. Keep it close. And keep the route simple. 5 miles is fine. 10 miles might not be. Set yourself up to succeed, not to feel defeated. Now, let's deal with the 2 biggest barriers, pride and anxiety. Pride says, I shouldn't have to reach out. Fine. Then accept the consequence, more silence. Because pride doesn't keep you company at 9 p.m. Anxiety says, what if it's awkward? It will be awkward for 30 seconds. Then it won't. Awkward is a small price to pay for not vanishing. If you need a workaround, start even smaller. Start by texting 1 sentence, not calling. Start by going to the library and staying 15 minutes, not an hour. Start by picking 1 familiar person, not the whole world. The goal is to create a rhythm your nervous system can tolerate. Here's what I want you to understand. Loneliness isn't loud. That's why it's dangerous. You can live with it for years and call it peace. But peace doesn't make you feel invisible. Peace doesn't make you dread evenings. Peace doesn't make you talk to the TV like it's a person. A small, consistent net of connection will change your life more than any grand plan. 1 weekly place, 1 weekly call. That's how you rebuild a life that has people in it. And if you're not reaching out, be honest, part of it isn't time. It's fear of what people will think. Part 6, Freedom from Other People's Opinions. How much of your life is still being run by people who don't pay your bills? I mean that seriously. People who don't cover your Medicare copay, don't pay your property taxes. Don't put gas in your car yet. You're still living like they get a vote. This is one of the last traps of aging, and it's a quiet one. You retire, You finally get some freedom. And then you spend that freedom managing what other people might think. The church ladies, the neighbors, the HOA crowd, old coworkers, even your own grown kids. You start behaving like you're still auditioning for approval, and you don't even realize you're doing it. Let me tell you about Teresa. She's a grandma, mid-60s, sweet lady, strong lady. She did something simple. She danced in the living room with her grandkid, and somebody recorded it. Nothing wild, nothing inappropriate. Just a moment that should have made her smile. Instead, her stomach dropped. Not because she did anything wrong, because she started imagining the commentary. What will the ladies at church say? What will my neighbors say? What if? Someone thinks I'm trying too hard. What if I look foolish? She stared at that little video like it was evidence in a trial. That's the real fear right there. It's not the dancing. It's the idea of being seen, looking foolish, looking needy, looking old, losing reputation, and for a lot of us, that fear was installed early. Don't embarrass yourself. Keep your business private. Be respectable. Don't give people something to talk about. That voice followed you into retirement like a shadow. Here's what I want you to see. People will talk anyway. You can be quiet, polite, and invisible, and somebody will still find something to say. You can mind your own business, keep your lawn perfect, wave at the neighbors, and somebody will still whisper. That's small-town gossip. That's suburban gossip. That's how some people entertain themselves when they don't have a life. And it costs you. It cost you the chance to try anything new. It cost you friendships you never made because you didn't want to look awkward. It cost you afternoons you could have spent around humans, but you stayed home because someone might see you at the senior center lunch. This is how the house becomes a cage, not because you're trapped, because you keep choosing safety over life. You skip the library class because you're afraid you'll look slow. You don't sign up for community college continuing ed because you think, I'm too old. You don't go to the diner on Main Street alone because you don't want to be seen sitting by yourself. You don't reach out because you worry you'll sound pathetic. You end up alone, not because nobody wanted you, but because you were managing appearances. Let me run my own loop here, because I've done this too. I used to think, if I look put together and respectable, I'll be safe. That was the lie. Then I watched what it cost me: missed friendships, missed joy, missed chances to be a real human being because I was too busy trying to look like the right kind of older man. That was the pain. Now I know the truth. People's opinions are cheap. Your time is not. Here's the hard truth I promised you. Their opinions don't keep you warm at night, don't cover your copay, and won't sit with you in the waiting room. When you're staring at a Medicare bill, when you're worried about prescription costs, when you're trying to make a fixed income stretch, the people judging you are not the people saving you. They're just noise. Dignity is not perfection. Dignity is telling the truth about what you want and drawing a line. Dignity is being willing to be seen as a normal, imperfect, aging person because you are one, and there's nothing shameful about that. So let's make this practical. I'm going to give you a framework I use, and it keeps life simple. It's 3 levels of boundaries. Level 1, what I don't explain. You don't owe people a full report on your choices. If you're going to the senior center for lunch, you don't have to justify it. If you're taking a beginner class at the library, you don't have to give a speech about personal growth. You're allowed to just do it. Level 2, what I don't debate. Some people want to argue your life like it's a topic on cable news. They'll tease you, poke you, question you. You don't have to wrestle. You can end it fast. Level 3, what I don't ask permission for. This is the big one. At 65, 70, 75, if you're still asking permission to enjoy your own life, something is broken. You've earned your freedom. Stop asking permission to use it. Now I'm going to give you one script, one sentence, because a lot of people Need a line they can actually say without getting into a fight. Here it is, I hear you, but I'm fine with my choice. Say it calmly. Then stop talking. You don't have to convince them. You just have to end the conversation. If someone keeps pushing, here's the next line. I'm not discussing it. Again, calm. No anger. No apology. You're not being rude. You're protecting your peace. Now comes the action. I want you to do one brave yes within the next 7 days. Not a life overhaul. One small yes that breaks the habit of hiding. Pick something that fits your body, your budget, and your nerves. Maybe it's a $20 beginner class at the library painting. Basic computer help. Whatever. Maybe it's the senior center lunch. Even if you just go once and sit for 20 minutes. Maybe it's going to the diner on Main Street alone and ordering coffee. Just to prove you can. Maybe it's posting a normal family photo without worrying if you look older. Maybe it's wearing what you want to wear to the grocery store without dressing. For other people, if mobility is an issue, choose a low-pressure setting. Go during the day. Keep it close 5 miles, not 20. If hearing aids make group settings tough, pick something quieter like a library program instead of a loud hall. If anxiety is loud, bring one person the first time, then go alone next time. The goal is not to be fearless. The goal is to stop letting fear make your decisions. Here's what's going to happen when you do this. You're going to feel a little exposed for a minute. Then you'll realize the world doesn't end. Most people are too busy thinking about themselves to think about you. And the few who do judge you, let them. They can keep their opinions. You keep your life. And I'm going to warn you about the next thing, because it's coming. Once you stop fearing people, you finally face the thing you've really been trying to control: money, health, and what happens next. Part 7. Letting go of control while keeping your dignity. What are you trying to control right now that is quietly controlling you? I'm not talking about being responsible. I'm talking about that tight grip you keep on life because you're scared. Scared of the market, scared of your health, scared of being a burden, scared of waking up one day and realizing you're out of runway. I learned the hard way that life doesn't care about your plan or your pride. You can do everything right and still get hit. And if you built your whole sense of safety on control, that hit doesn't just shake your finances, it shakes your identity. I'm going to tell you about Mike because his story is more common than people admit. Mike worked overtime for decades. He wasn't reckless. He saved. He did the boring, responsible things. He watched his 401k like it was a second job. And he thought that meant he was protected. Then the market took a bite out of his retirement plan. And it wasn't a small bite. The kind that makes you stare at the statement and feel your stomach drop. Around the same time, life hit him again. His wife died. And suddenly it wasn't just a money problem. It was grief plus fear plus exhaustion. That's the double hit. When money gets shaky and the person who used to steady you is gone, you find out real fast what you were depending on. Mike said the same thing I've heard from a lot of good people I did. Everything right. I followed the rules. I worked overtime. I saved. And it still happened. That sentence is loaded with shame. Because underneath it is another sentence nobody wants to say. So maybe I failed. That's where the panic spiral starts. You try to fix the feeling by controlling more. You check your 401k balance every morning like it's going to apologize. You doom scroll news until you feel sick, then you keep scrolling anyway. You start micromanaging your adult kids, not because you're mean, but because you're terrified and control feels like love when you don't know what else to do. You refuse help because accepting help feels like admitting you're sliding. You avoid doctor visits because you're scared of what they might find. Or you go to too many doctors because you're trying to manage aging like a project, and all the while, the real pressures keep pressing. Medicare doesn't make everything free. Copays stack up. Prescriptions cost what they cost, sometimes $150 a month for one medication. Sometimes more. Property taxes don't lower themselves because you're older. Gas is still expensive, and every appointment is miles, time, and stress. If you're living on Social Security checks plus whatever you pull from savings, the fear of outliving money is not imaginary. It's real. But here's the truth most people don't want to face. Control is not safety. Control is a coping habit. It's what you do when your nervous system doesn't trust the world anymore. And I'm not judging that. I'm telling you what it is, because you can't fix something you refuse to name. I used to think, if I control every detail, nothing can hurt me. That was the lie. Then life did what life does, it hurt me anyway. And my need to control made it worse. It kept me tense, it kept me isolated. And it kept me from asking for help until things were already heavy. That was the pain. Now I know the truth. Dignity comes from choosing your next right step, not from predicting the future. Here's the hard truth that sets people free if they let it. You can't control outcomes. You can control the next hour. That's it. The next hour is where your power lives now, not in the market. Not in what your kids choose, not in whether your knee acts up next month. The next hour? So what does dignity look like? It looks like paying attention to your basics instead of feeding pride. It looks like asking for help before you're in a crisis. It looks like making choices that reduce suffering instead of keeping up. Appearances, dignity isn't I never struggle. Dignity is I struggle and I still take the next step. I want you to focus on 3 things you can control. First, your daily rhythm. The time you wake up, the small routine you keep, the one place you show up every week. Second, your response, what you feed your mind, what you say yes to, what you cut off. Third, who you keep close because isolation makes everything worse. And the wrong people add gasoline to your fear. Now I'm going to give you 3 tools, not ideas, tools. You can do them with paper and a pen. Tool 1 is the 2 columns exercise. Take a sheet of paper and draw a line down the middle. On the left, right, I control. On the right, right, I don't control. On the left, list what is actually yours, your sleep schedule, a 10-minute walk, making your next appointment, calling one person, eating one decent meal, limiting the news, taking meds on time, asking a neighbor for help with a heavy task instead of risking a fall. On the right, list what you keep pretending you can run the market. Inflation. Whether your adult kids call back, whether your health stays perfect, whether everyone approves of you, then here's the key. Within 24 hours, pick one item from the I control column and do it. Not think about it, do it. If the item is call the doctor, make the call. If it's walk 10 minutes, do it. If it's turn off the news after dinner, do it. This is how you reclaim power without pretending you're in control of everything. Tool 2 is a weekly money calm routine for fixed income. I'm not giving you financial advice. I'm giving you a way to stop panicking. Once a week, same day, same time. You do a 1-page check-in. That page has 5 lines: bills due this week, auto pay status, upcoming appointments and co-pays, prescription refills, and one small buffer decision. That buffer decision might be simple: skip one non-essential trip to save gas. Cook at home twice, delay a purchase until next week. The point is, you stop letting money fear ambush you at 2 Mom. When you do this weekly, your brain stops spinning as much because you've put the unknown into a container. The panic comes from fog. Clarity doesn't solve every problem, but it stops the spiral. Tool 3 is gratitude, but I want to be very clear what I mean. I do not mean pretending everything is fine. I don't mean forced positivity. I mean mental hygiene. For 14 days, before bed, write 3 lines. Not paragraphs, 3 lines. Line 1, something that didn't go wrong today. Line 2, one person who mattered today, even if it was a short interaction. Line 3, one thing your body allowed you to do today, even if it was small. This trains your mind to stop hunting only for threats. At our age, our brains are good at finding danger. Gratitude is how you keep that skill from eating you alive. Now let's talk about purpose, because this is where dignity really returns. Purpose doesn't have to be big. It has to be real. 1 hour a week is enough to change your posture. I've seen it happen with a man who started tutoring at the local library. 1 hour a week, he wasn't saving the world. He was helping a kid read better. But he had a reason to get dressed. He had someone who expected him. His days stopped feeling like empty air. I've seen it with someone mentoring at a community college, just helping younger folks fill out job applications and talk through life. Decisions. I've seen it with a widower who made 1 call a week to another, widower 10. Minutes, no fixing, just being there. That kind of purpose doesn't cost much money. It costs presence, and it gives back stability. If you're dealing with grief, let me say something that won't win me points. But it's true. Grief doesn't care about your timeline. It will show up when it wants. You don't move on. You build a life around it. And dignity is allowing the grief to exist without letting it run everything. If you're dealing with money stress, let me say this too. You can be smart and still get hit. That doesn't make you stupid. It makes you human. The shame is optional. The next step is not. So here's how I want you to leave this video. Because this is the final chapter, and I don't want you walking away with a warm feeling and no movement. Pick one of these for this week. Do the 2 columns and take 1 24-hour. Action. Do the 1-page money calm routine once, or do the 14-day 3-line gratitude. Just one. Start there. And if you want to make it real, leave 1 word in the comments that names what you're releasing control. Shame, fear, pride, waiting. Not a speech. 1 word. Because once you name it, you can stop letting it run you. Life is still going to be uncertain. That's not going away. But you can stop living like you're trying to outsmart the future. Protect the next hour. Protect your dignity. That's how you win at this age.